Wimbledon gets a brand refresh. Netflix says they can't deal with talk shows. And what's the deal with micro-influencers? We have a lot to get to today. Welcome to Case of the Mondays, the best place to start your Monday for the business and marketing folks out there. I'm Nick Williams, your host. Let's get straight into it. So we're going to start off with Wimbledon. This was an article I saw, a few articles actually, and it was pretty topical. I had written it, and I was thinking about writing it before Coco, the 15-year-old, and I don't want to mispronounce her last name, Gruff. Incredible story, but I don't know what that would, imagine that. Imagine, playing Venus Williams, which is her idol. She's a 15-year-old girl. I don't know how do you think Venus feels about that? So I don't know. It's interesting, right? But so all this had transpired, and it was something that I had already written and I wanted to put out there, and then this occurred, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. A lot of marketing, obviously, we'll get into all these things off cuff, but a lot of marketing has to do with being topical, being relevant, and being how well timed is your content, and what's your insight like. So the piece that I had written and put up on YouTube, I just want to break it down a little bit because, it was a 2.5 minute video. It's pretty short just because I wanted to get it out there and see what it's like. But so Coco actually beat Venus. She's in the round of 16 technically. She's like the general. If you're not familiar with tennis, how it happens is they have these like round robins beforehand, in which it's almost like the play-in game for the NCAAs. And that's obviously, I'm generalizing. Give me some rope. I don't want 1,000 emails from tennis fans, right? I'm just basically explaining it. So basically how that worked was, she got in, and incredible story. And honestly, I'm going to watch, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. She already played and lost, but I'm going to do what I can to watch that next match. Obviously busy around here, but I think it's important, and it's really awesome news for the sport, but also it's really timely for Wimbledon itself, who's doing a brand refresh. And Wimbledon's brand refresh was this is one of those things where big brands with a lot of equity, they say things like that. They say brand refresh, but in essence they go in and change a couple lines of code in their website. But this one's real. So if you're listening to this, you're not seeing what I'm doing. I'm pulling up Wimbledon's brand, their website, and I'm going to pull up actually what they. I'm going to pull up what they were actually doing with their website, and as you can see, so let's find her. Here we go. So their actual website does contain a lot of changes, and it looks very modern. And that was one of the things they were talking about for the brand refresh, which was, how do we modernize this? And they quoted themselves as saying, we haven't had a brand refresh in so long. We hadn't had a brand refresh in 7 to 8 years. Those are very powerful words from a big brand. And I don't know everyone out there how honest you've been about that, but I think being that honest and open about it. God, sorry guys, it took so long to find that. Being so honest and so open about their lack of change, that's so powerful. Like, would you openly admit in front of the world that you haven't looked at anything in years? And Wimbledon's a giant brand. So either they got a lot of pushback, or from my understanding, they got a lot of internal people, moving things around. So she's actually playing live round of 16 right now. She's playing the 7th seed, 4-3. And she potentially could break her. So she's 15-30. Okay, so anyways, that's pretty interesting. Watch that live. But keep that tab open. So the brand refresh, it's fascinating because they the one thing they said in their trailer was, okay, we're not gonna just be another nice trailer. And when you look at their trailer, obviously it's a nice trailer, but they did make a switch, and this was something I noticed too. Wimbledon always talked about the past. They always, because like the golden era, and I feel like they're not. It's not, before this tournament, it wouldn't have been big news that Coco had won, like, because they're so used to the famous story, the old storylines. How does, and Wimbledon's usually an older tennis player's dream. Like, they're usually the ones that dominate the slower grass. But with Coco actually winning and moving on, it was perfectly timed because their whole pitch was about let's look to the future. And I think they understood that the demographics were shifting beneath them. And if you don't keep up, you're going to get left behind. And that applies to your business too, every business. And I think this is something that at DeepBridge, I'm trying to do all the time, right? Like the idea of authenticity, which is going to be embedded throughout this whole podcast. The theme of this is how do you actually move with the customer trends that are happening right now? Number one, you have to identify them. Number two, you have to identify the metrics in which you can seem relevant. And that's going to be this notion of authenticity, engaging socially, celebration, culture. Those are some of the ideals that I try to stick to in 2019 throughout the rest of the year. Those are things that I'm going to push. And long form content is a form of that. There's not many business, and it may take 20 podcasts for thousands of people to start listening. It may take none. It may take one for me to realize no one gives a shit, right? And that's okay. That's fine with me. But I think you have to give it a shot. You have to feel out what works and what doesn't. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Because I think a lot of people in a digital age understand that you can put up whatever image you want, but until you get in that room, and the customer wants to know more. Technology has, talked about it before, but the power to get to the moon, the technology and the math they had, and the computing power sits in your pocket. Except what's in your pocket is hundreds of times stronger than the power they had to get to the moon. So you can understand the consumers they want to know answers, and they're gonna look things up. One thing we push is it's not necessarily that attention spans have changed. You just suck at telling a good story, and they can find a better one. All they got to do is open their phone. I sit on my phone all the time, but it's not because I'm not engaged, and I'm aware of it, and I'm conscious of it. I can't imagine someone who doesn't do this for a living and isn't weaponizing attention. Like, they're just looking at better stories. Be interesting, and people will pay attention to you. Tell good marketing stories, and you'll get likes. I am 100% openly, I'm telling you, I'm guilty of it. Look at my Instagram page with the Instagram update, the algorithm update. There's if you had any sort of I don't want to say not real people, but if you had non-engaged people just double, clicking like whatever, just, nonchalantly, cavalierly, all that's dead because Instagram's pushing a certain type of content. Obviously, we're trying to figure it out. And that's something that if it was cracked, someone would be very, very, very wealthy. But, just tell a good story. And I'm actually gonna check the Instagram tomorrow at deep_bridge. I'm actually just gonna, instead of I believe in giving things away. I don't necessarily think I think that's probably one of my pet peeves is that people will hold something hostage and they're like, oh, sign up, buy this, buy that. I'm not gonna do that, and I'm just gonna give it away. And so I'm gonna completely revamp the Instagram page. Hold me accountable, no joke. Go check it. Call me out on my bullshit if I don't do it. And the one, you just have to be authentic. And so going back to Wimbledon, and then we'll move on to Netflix. Going back to Wimbledon, I've got their page pulled up. First of all, it's parallax scrolling. I don't think they had that before, but they basically I would say they did a decent amount of research for this, because this is how it's almost like, I picture it almost like a WordPress meets ESPN, and it's a really good case study. A Case of the Mondays will be full of case studies like this, but we'll look live at things and we'll kind of go through it. And if you're not watching, you'll be listening. So this is a good one. And I think another good site that is like this and reminds me of this, that is moving with the times and does a really good job. They could fix other things, but it's the F1 page. So I'm a big, I'll try not to talk about it all the time, but probably will. I'm a big Formula One fan, and I think the Formula One website is incredible for how they actually display their website. And like I said, I wish there were some other things that they would fix, but they do an incredible job. In Silverstone, the British Grand Prix is coming up, so they're just going to start pushing that type of content. Why we love the British Grand Prix. If you look at how they lead content, they talk about things, it's such a driver-driven sport. They've had to adapt. They've had to, one very technical change, and I've noticed in terms of the branding dynamics, they made it about country love and country support rather than team and driver support. Because when you are a fan of Spain, for instance. Let's say you're from Spain, or you're a fan of Spanish sports in general. Motorsports has a lot of Spanish drivers coming in and out. So Alonso just retired, but you got Carlos Sainz who's in there right now. So when one driver retires, and you're only a fan of you're a driver supporter first, well, now you just lost a lot of fans. But if you make it by country, and so there are 21 races around the world, all in different countries on different continents. There's one in the U.S. coming up. Then you basically have an infinity fan. The ability for the fan to connect is limitless, right? So that's a very smart way to do it. And Wimbledon is moving towards that. They're saying, let's look at what's to come. And I think they're going to do a lot better job of writing content that's like this. They're going to start pushing content that is a little bit more forward thinking. They're going to make, obviously, this is going to be mobile friendly, mobile optimized, and the actual, I'm sure the time on site has massively increased. I'm sure the bounce rate has massively decreased. I want to sit here and I want to click play on these matches. You can watch them and click them and play live. So this is great. Yeah, this website's great, and I think it's a really nice little case study. So go check it out. Go check out the Wimbledon site. This Case of the Mondays is a perfect place to start. And it's a perfect place to end too. So check out obviously the Formula One website as well for another some more inspiration. If you're driving, listening on your headphones, make a note of it. It's worth it. Check it out. All right, shifting gears. Let's check out Netflix and talk shows. So, actually, when I first started the program, I said, Netflix says they don't do well talk shows. Well, that's not necessarily, I don't want to misrepresent or mischaracterize what they said. The reports are saying, I saw a lot of articles actually come out at once about this. And the reports are saying, Netflix doesn't hold their talk shows very well. And in comparison to, things like, you look at things like Trevor Noah or something like that. And the Patriot Act is one show on Netflix that's done pretty well in terms of keeping their audience, but they can't really crack the code of talk shows. And I think, so I think the one problem they're having is they haven't trained their customers to, they've trained their customers to binge. They haven't trained their customers to come back and watch habitually. So if you're making more topical content, so if I were to make content like this, and I did it, let's say I did it every single day, which essentially I do on DeepBridgeConsulting.com. If I'm writing blogs, I'm personally writing a lot. And I think that's the only way, I think that's the best way. I think people, our membership program is all about, topical news. Not a lot of business, they're all magazines and stuff like that, like Entrepreneur, but there's at those big companies, you can't have a real take like this. I can't say something sucks or doesn't suck necessarily. There's a lot of politics involved, and you're not going to get that here. And I think at Netflix, it's a bit of the same way. They're playing a lot of politics. You can only have certain types of programs. Like Shapiro, the Shapiro Show can never be on Netflix. They just wouldn't do it. And so the people aren't coming back and watching shows regularly. That's not what they're doing. They're not checking in because Netflix made in my eyes, a very wise decision to binge, and this started with House of Cards. So think about when House of Cards was released, and actually I'll refer you over another good case study, quote unquote, is air quoting over here, is Business Wars. Again, not that you're listening, guys, but they're reaching it started really good. So don't listen to the latest ones and go, Nick, what the hell were you thinking? So I don't like the latest ones, sorry, but go to the first ones. And one of the best ones is the Netflix one. So they did a revamp, a reboot. Don't fall for that. It was like a month ago. Don't listen. Go to the first one first one a long time ago. The first 5 they call them seasons, are so good. They're reaching. I don't know why they can't. Guys, do Ferrari versus anyone. There's more motorsport fans in the world than anything else. Anyways, go check out Business Wars podcast. So what Netflix needs to do a better job of is getting people to come back and watch things at a specific time. So that's where they deviated from like the HBO model, which it's more of like the calendar, the season, like the prototypical release schedule every Sunday at 7, every Wednesday at 6. And that has its own perks, right? That you have predictable consumers watching a program with certain numbers. It's better for ads. And then you have people like Netflix who can never run ads. There's a really good article about Netflix running ads and what it would do to their business. So I'm actually going to pull it up here so you know what I'm talking about. But I haven't gone through it totally, the data, and actually challenge the data. But I can tell you it's from CNBC, and it got put out on Friday. Yeah. So a new study found 23% of respondents would likely drop if Netflix subscriptions added advertisement, but they didn't lower the price. And frankly, as I look at that, 23% isn't that bad. But yeah, it's all a waiting game. Eventually, Netflix is going to have to bring ads, but when and what's going to happen? I think they have to really calculate the cost and what if there's a premium charge. But so back to the point of this is binging versus non-binging. Netflix trained their customer to binge. They trained it starting with House of Cards, and they talk a lot about that in the Business Wars podcast. But the decision to do that has been very lucrative for them. And I think if you get away from, the reason HBO is able to do that is because they got away from that, and people know to go check the John Oliver show. They know to go check Trevor Noah because that's what they're, if they go check another time, it's just going to be the older content. They can't just watch whatever they want whenever they want. And so if something happens today, you're not just going to go binge this, 4 hours of my, while soothing, very aggressive positions on things and very candid nature. You're not going to go listen to 4 hours of that back to back to back to back. You're going to do it while you're doing something else. You're going to play it as background music. You're going to find a new way to leverage and hear information in a space that you didn't normally do it. So listening in the car is something people are starting to do in podcasts and even YouTube videos. But you're not just going to go binge it. So that's why Netflix does a really bad job of it. And it's interesting that they can't crack the code because Netflix basically invented training your customer to binge. It was a big, big gamble. Again, they talk about it on the Business Word podcast, the first one with Netflix. It was a big gamble they took to just be like, here you go. Here's everything. And we just wrote an article on Stranger Things, which we're going to double back on and do the taste test. But the new Coke that just got released, so look out for that. But essentially what happened was Stranger Things just got, released all at one time. And for people who are newer to Netflix somehow, if live under a rock, that was new to them. But it was just interesting seeing people react. Oh, I can watch everything. And now people were explaining the ending, going, God, I haven't even watched the first one. Why are people explaining the ending? So it's just a problem they find themselves in. But it's ironic because they're the ones that got themselves there. And I think it's not. I don't necessarily think it's that they can't figure it out. I think that they don't. I'm not sure they want to figure it out. I'm not sure they want to switch to that model. But training the problem with Netflix and talk shows is not that they can't crack the code. It's just that I think they could. All you have to do is get the consumer to have a reason to come back, and that would be different than you just have to change the model of publishing. One awesome, really smart thing, and I think if you're out there listening, one thing you can think about, and there's so many applications for this, but I think that comedians are leading the way in terms of content creation and content publication. And what I mean by that is go look at your favorite comedian, go on YouTube, and type in their name. A great example is the most popular podcast in the world is the Joe Rogan Show. Go on YouTube. Joe Rogan Show, obviously, it's a video podcast just like this one. So I'm going to end up doing this exact same thing. Again, I'm not full of shit. I'm going to be doing these things too, right there with you. So if they fail, I'll let you know. But I think the Joe Rogan Show has full on clips. His podcasts are 3 hours. He just talks to people. But he also has a separate page that's called the JRE Clips. And I'll do this exact same thing. I'll pull out the golden nuggets. Some of the stuff I say could be dumb. It couldn't, maybe it's not revolutionary, but there's going to be some stuff that's really good. There's going to be some stuff that's really applicable, and it'll be broken up and chunked. And it'll be 4-minute clips of just that. Maybe it's really funny. Maybe my TV falls behind me, which would suck, but I'm sure someone would think it's hilarious. But yeah, so there's just little golden nuggets strewn in to everything I'm saying that I think could be pulled out. And that's what the type of content that Netflix could consider. They could consider something like that. Like, why not consider something like that? One of the studies that I was reading was, it's something I've been alluding to for a while, and I'm just going to start to make it official and talk about it more. But that's this idea of cross streaming or second streaming and second screening. Sorry. And the way to think about that is, when was the last time you watched TV and didn't look at something on your phone? It was super rare. And I think we still, I've worked at P&G, I've worked at these big places, and everyone does this. I'm going to make some more content about this, but like the TV upfronts, this is an insane idea that you plan out media spaces for the full year, all in like one little crunch period. That's not how TV works. That's not how media works, and that's going to be disrupted in the next 5 years. And if you're doing otherwise, or if you think otherwise, show me the data, because you're an insane person. Show me the data, prove me wrong. Show me the data that's not suggesting that that's where consumption habits are going. That you're going to be able to plot out for a full year. Things change in 3 months, let alone in a full year. People are acting like the old school disruptions of, I've got to take a pee, I've got to get some food, I'll be back in 30 seconds, I'll run and beat the commercial. That's not what happens anymore. I'll just pause the show. I'll fast forward the show. And TiVo disrupted that. It's not like all of a sudden, like we got, people change. Like TiVo did this 5-10 years ago. So people are still, they're still not caught on, but cross screening is happening. Second screening is happening. When people get bored, they just go to their second screen. Again, it goes back to attention spans. If the show is shitty, okay, well, I'll pull my phone up and I'll kind of watch it in the background. But when for instance, when a podcast is really good, I pause the TV. If I'm coding something or working in my home office, I've got something playing in the background while I'm actually working. So, you think about it like that, then all of a sudden, the ability for you to get someone to come back, like no one's sitting and watching a show anymore. So your content needs to be broken up like these comedians who have long form content and short form content. And if Netflix does something like that, they're basically accepting the fact that when people are doing anything, when they're cleaning the house, when they're making dinner, when they're doing any of these things, right? Like they're also doing something else. So if you have if they put, and where I'm going with this is, this is just, this idea is dumb. It's dumb, but the point is, it's getting your brain thinking too. This is Monday. Wake up, right? So let's talk about actual cases on a case of the Mondays. If for instance, let's play it out. Let's say that Netflix made a deal that said exclusively, Joe Rogan, we want all your clips. We want your clips channel. Now, people can go out and make compilations like they do. We're entitled to a piece of that, just like every other podcast. If Joe Rogan makes clips and someone makes a compilation of his clips, he's entitled to some of that because it's copyright. But maybe you do that too. You have to be mindful of that. I understand. But let's say Netflix goes out and has an exclusive deal to say, no, we want your clips. You take your full show. Fine. Do what you got to do. And we actually just play your full show on Netflix. I think that would be something that's interesting because people underestimate visual cues. So if I'm sitting here thinking, this was going to be only a podcast with no video, that's really stupid because all the time in the background, I'm showing things and talking about things. This is the first episode of Case of the Mondays. Even while I'm sitting here talking, I already have a bunch of ideas. I'll use my Stream Deck. I'll go ahead and set up multicam. I'll switch back and forth and toggle. I'll be using OBS and screen recording. So then I'll pop in the actual screen so you don't have to squint and feel like an idiot. Now that I'm looking at this with the bokeh showing, you can't actually even see the background, but whatever. I'm still going to refer to these articles. You can go check them out later. You guys, I assume you're smart. You can just listen to what I'm saying and then go click it if you want later. But that's the idea of what I'm going to do next. And so when people are sitting here, don't undervalue the visual cues. So if people are playing the Joe Rogan podcast, I watch it all the time. The clips are the funniest parts. If I'm in the shower listening, I wish I could see it because that is where the character comes out. And that's why comedians are leading the way, because it lets you get, Chris D'Elia is congratulations. Frankly, I haven't really even listened to a full podcast of his. And they're not like hours long, but his clips, it's called Clips for the Babies. It's so funny, literally so funny. And it wouldn't be as funny if I couldn't have the video version of it. So my point is, when you have to all Netflix has to do to train their customer to come back and make talk shows, quote unquote, work again, which apparently, quote unquote, isn't working, which I can get behind that. This article was a little bit flamboyant about those titles. It was a little bit clickbaity, but I think all Netflix has to do is change the type of content they're making. You know, they're buying and making shows. Do it. Keep doing it. That's smart. That's great. I think a lot of publication houses, that's being disrupted as we speak. Netflix started that a long time ago. But change the content you're making. Change the content you're putting out there. Talk shows can't be like a typical show. The Letterman show, great. That's a great show. That's going to do well on Netflix. The Patriot Act, that's going to do great on Netflix. But at what point do you start to accept that making these giant $1 million feature, like, the consumer is going more towards authenticity? Why do you think the Joe Rogan show is the #1 podcast? Why are people so confused about this? It's because he's no frills. He's not full of shit, right? He's honestly, he could get political. He's got millions of downloads, but he sticks true to who he is. And he has people from all sides come on. He has politicians come on. He's got Alex Jones on sometimes. He's got Eddie Bravo going crazy on there. He's had Shapiro on. He's had Peterson on. I think he's even had like Milo on. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. But the point is, he's had a lot of people on. And I think that being authentic, that's what people want. And so these giant produced shows are great. Obviously, Netflix is $1 billion company. But I don't think, I think that if you want to move with the future and the disruption in the consumer trends that's happening, you have to start thinking about a new way to push content. And pushing this more of this like off the cuff stuff. These video podcasts and even clips, if you wanted to own the clips and show the Joe Rogan clips. If I'm telling you right now, if they put on Joe Rogan clips and Netflix, if you're listening, take the clips and test it out. I swear to God, put it on Netflix and see if people go and listen. See if people go and watch 4-minute clips. And that's talk about binging. Or put like your favorite comedian compilations. And I think getting to these like I keep calling them like compilation video playlists. I think that's the thing that Netflix is going to get to, because it mixes binge watching, and it mixes authenticity. And I think that would crush. So I don't think wrapping that up, I don't think Netflix has a talk show problem. I think they have a consumer problem. They just have to train their consumer on how to, retrain them on how to consume certain content. For the first time, Netflix is on their back foot when it comes to consumer trends, habits, and what they want and how to get it across. Now, I say all that with a giant caveat. Netflix may not give a shit about this. They may not want to push, talk shows. They may want to do the Letterman shows. But these giant produced show with Kanye coming on and, a big audience. But I do think at some point that, I think the consumer is going to push more towards that. So like I said, for the first, never thought I'd say this, but comedians are on the leading edge, 100%. Go look at your favorite comedian. I bet you if they're any good, Tom Segura, they all have podcasts that are long form. Theo Von, podcast, long form. Fighter and the Kid, one of my favorite podcasts, long form. Also, the podcast clip, or the Fighter and the Kid clips, probably all modeled off the Joe Rogan show. He's got, thousands of podcasts. But I think the Fighter and the Kid's been going almost just as long. So, I want, like I said, Case of the Mondays to be an actual long form case study basically every single Monday. And so we're going to have multiple cases just like we've had today. And we're going to get into the last one, which is less of an article, content produced, and more of just let's talk about it, because I think it's something that can apply to you, because the whole theme of this is more about authenticity. We're going to be talking about like engaging and stuff like that. Culture. So how do you keep a really good culture in this day and age? And it only makes sense that this podcast themes authenticity. And what you should take away from this is, how do you become more authentic in your brand and in your business? And one way to do that, because we look at the two cases we talked about today, which is Wimbledon and Netflix, how they tie in, is we're talking about what it means to be truly, vulnerable to your consumer, because that's what they want. That's what they're looking for off the cuff. I'm not going to edit anything out of this. I promise you. I'm not going to change anything. Some stuff I'm already looking back and going, God, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have been so strong here or there. Maybe I shouldn't have shown my hand here. I don't care, because I think what's in my brain, when you think about buying something, listening to something, your time is insanely important. A lot of people, in my opinion, my time is more important than my money. So if you're sitting here listening, you're at least going to be entertained. I'm not just going to bullshit you with fluff, right? Like, if you don't like me, you don't like me. If you like what I'm saying, you like what I'm saying. If you don't like my nature, you don't like my nature. But you don't have to watch. You don't have to listen, and I want you to, because I think you're going to get a lot out of this in terms of how I challenge you. But I think that's attention is basically going to become the most important. Time and attention are going to be the most important commodities, because people are so over the past few years with digital. I love how digital has disrupted everything and allowed us to do things as marketers, but it gives agencies such a bad name. And that's why I want to get in front of the camera on the mic for 40 minutes at a time, because this is one thing you can't fake. If you put someone in front of a camera to talk about a strategy and go talk, they'll fall apart, right? Like, you don't have to agree with me, but at least I can back it up with data. At least I have concepts and opinions and structures, and I can prove what I'm saying, and in a sense of I can talk about it from the consumer behavior standpoint. But I think this is one thing you can't fake. So authenticity is the entire basically theme of this. And the one thing I want to talk about is, again, it was a pretty good article, but I just saw a glimpse of it, and it was talking about the micro influencers and how that, I agree with this. And I think, leave me alone on my spelling. All right. I've got a lot of stuff here. I can't reach over it. Basically, if you're listening, I spelled honestly, one of the more atrocious performances of my life. Honestly, what did that even say? Okay. So, let's see if I can find it, but let's talk through it really quick. And the interesting thing about this is a lot of people don't even understand the concept of what a micro-influencer really is. And let's see if I can find the actual article I saw. That's from 2018. Micro-influencers, just think about, so let's go back to influencer marketing and what that actually is, and then we'll drop down and drill down into what micro-influencer is. So the influencer audience is basically if you've got a celebrity pushing something for you, and you can think about it as an endorsement. That's probably the easiest way to think about it to the layman. So that's influencer marketing. Is you pay someone famous and they get a percentage, they get whatever, some form of cut of the sale. You can include them in a profit share. That would be the influencer marketing world. And they push your brand for you. And obviously they're opening up a new world. They're trying to be appealing. They're trying to be approachable. You pick someone who's on your brand, who resembles your brand and lines up your ideal consumer. Micro-influencer, this concept of micro-influencers to say, look, that even feels, the influencer brand, the influencer model still feels not as authentic. And again, we're going a route of we need to be more and more authentic. So you're going to train an actor to appear more authentic? So you can't do that. And I think the micro-influencer world, why it's great is because it gets people who are not as famous, but maybe more regionally relevant. So let's say you're a small business in Cincinnati, Ohio. Well, hiring someone like Ryan Gosling to promote your product, sure, that's great. Yeah, that's great. But would it be more powerful than a Cincinnati Reds baseball player? I don't know, honestly. I don't know in terms of when we're talking about intent, purchase intent. So not recognition, not reach, not broad appeal, intent. And I think if you had a famous, even if you had a Marvin Lewis pushing your product in Cincinnati, Ohio, that's going to do well than, I don't know why I keep going to this, but that would do well than a Ryan Gosling pushing your product in Cincinnati, Ohio. I really do think that. And that's because I think there's more of a regional appeal, and it seems more authentic to have someone who's Cincinnati. You think of Marvin Lewis, you do think Cincinnati. If you're from Cincinnati, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, picture someone else. If you had, if you're in San Francisco and you had LeBron James pushing a product versus Steph Curry, you think Steph Curry, you think San Francisco, you think Golden State. It's a more of a regional appeal. Now, Steph Curry is one of the most recognizable athletes in the world, but you get my point. And I think as you think about micro influencers, how can someone in your region, because they're actually, you can reach them. They're not going to be millions of dollars. Having someone with 10,000 followers and is regionally known, if I have like Nick Van Axel in Cincinnati come and talk and push my product, I can do that. I can probably afford that. But I can't afford LeBron James talking about my product. So you get the point. You find someone who has brand relevance and equity in that region, but actually wants, because it's a two-way street. You can actually reach them and talk to them and afford them probably, but also they can be more authentic about it. They grew up here. They can tap into those things. They have those networks. They can give you insight and access to customers you couldn't do before. And it's all a dollars and cents game, and it reminds me a lot of Moneyball. So you have to start to statistically weaponize your budgets and your reach and understand, okay, where's the trade-off? Because I think there's going to be a little bit of okay, I'm not going to pay $500,000 to go ahead and reach you get 10 million impressions only to have, purchase intent scattered across the country. What if you just spend $5,000 and have a much higher conversion with someone who can tell much more of a specific targeted message to the people of your region? That would drastically increase, it would decrease your reach and impressions because you're spending less on that marketing aspect, but your conversions would skyrocket. Let's say you could do a simple math problem. And there's another, I'll screen record and I'll actually show it on my iPad next time. But let's say you were to do, if you converted 10% of, X amount of impressions, but, you got significantly less impressions, all you have to do is do the math problem to say, okay, I can afford 20,000 less impressions if my conversion goes up to 50%. And now all you have to do, the question isn't how do I make more money? The question is how do I convert more? And then you can reverse engineer not only how do I convert more, but who converts the most, talking to who, people on the west side, people on, in this specific city, this location that go to this high school. And if you can just start to increase conversions in micro targeted ways, that's how you grow your brand. That's how you grow your equity, and that's how you grow your bottom line. So you have to really get personal with your consumer and tell stories that matter to them, because authenticity, micro influencers are the essence of authenticity. And the more you can push your message, your story, if your marketing is more on point with your customer, it's that simple. That's how you grow your business. So the more on point your message and your marketing is with your business to your ideal consumer, that's how you actually grow those conversions and your bottom line. So as you think about that's my challenge to you. The case study for Case of the Mondays is we've gone through Wimbledon, we've gone through Netflix. Now use yourself as a case study. Are you authentic? Everyone can sell more. That's a stupid question. The question is not, do you want to sell more? I would hope the answer is yes. How do you do it? Get more authentic. Stop telling bullshit stories on your social media and your ads about blah, blah, blah. You want this, want that. Stop doing that. Be honest. Be open. Upload a 30-second video, and that's my challenge to you this week. And video is one of the best ways to get authentic. Upload a 30-second video on Instagram, on Facebook. God, if you don't have Instagram or Facebook, stop what you're doing. But that's how, we're thinking about free reach here. And whatever platforms you plan, I don't care what it is. Go upload a 30-second video about your business. Just do that. Talk about who you are, what you stand for, what you do, what you mean to them, and what they should mean, or what they mean to you, and what you should mean to them. Branding 101, right? What do you want? What kind of ideas do you want to be, what type of ideas do you want to pop up in their head when they think about your brand? So that's what I want you to do. Just one, and then come back next Monday. We'll talk about something new. But one video of who you are. And if you're saying, I don't have you have an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you have a phone. Someone on your staff has a phone. But let it be you, the person listening to this, or challenge someone else in your organization. Or if you're in a bigger organization, let's say you're at a GE, you're at a P&G, your people on your staff should be your advocates. Brand managers, let me put it this way. If you're a brand manager and you're not pushing your own product, you're not doing this right. Have your employees be your advocates. It's the best way to push authenticity. Oh, this brand manager works there. All this brand manager does is talk about it. A certain brand, I can specifically think who does this incredibly well. A certain brand manager actually over at Crest White Strips does this insanely well. Not going to say her name, but I don't know if she'd be cool with that. But she's a brand manager at White Strips. That's all she talks about is White Strips. And it's known that she's a brand manager. And I think that's a part of the appeal. And it makes people want White Strips more because it's like, man, they work there and they love it that much. Obviously I should try it. It obviously has to work because she wouldn't be talking about it this much, but it's free marketing. Make your employees advocates. And it's also a way, it's a two-way street. It's also a way to build more of accountability into the pipeline of your business. Top talent only stays at companies and not goes out for themselves. The way you retain top talent is by making them feel like their own CEOs. So basically, generating and inputting and injecting this idea, this entrepreneurial spirit in your business is one of the best ways to keep top talent, because that's the only way people feel like they have control over situations and that you're asking them to perform. Make your employees advocates of your brand. It's free marketing, and it entrenches them. It makes them feel like they've got skin in the game, and that's what you want. That's what you want. That's one of the keys to authenticity that you can do from within. So that's that culture piece we talked about, and from without, quote unquote, like externally. And the way to externally do that is by challenge you. Videos. Make one video, upload something, and talk about it. And if you're someone that's listening to this and go, I don't know if my company would be cool with it, don't work. Obviously, okay, well, I'm not saying don't quit, but I'm not saying, don't actually quit your job. I'm not saying go ahead and do that, but I am saying you should be questioning, well, if I can't upload this, what's the point of brand authenticity at all? Is this company even doing that? So I just want you to challenge that and think about that and think through that and ask questions like, why can't I talk about this? But you should be able to. And I would say, talk about it. You make toilet paper, you work for a toilet paper company. Why aren't you talking about toilet paper? Right? Just about every piece of clothes I have is DeepBridge Consulting. I just happen to not be wearing a shirt. I had the hat on, but that's how we're going to wrap it up today. So next Monday, be sure to check this out. I'll market it a little bit more, but this is just to give you a little bit of a taste. And, we'll actually have its own podcast channel. It'll have its own, it'll be on its own iTunes and stuff like that on Apple Podcasts. So with the launch of the DeepBridge Consulting website, this is going to be a new segment of that, of long form content, every single Monday. What time is it? 10:46. So it'll be uploaded a lot sooner, usually by about 9 a.m. So when you're starting your workday, maybe even a little bit earlier, we'll wait for the feedback, but off the cuff, it's going to be very authentic. We're going to get into usually at least 3 stories, and then we'll talk about the challenge you this week. But place in the background, basically, no longer do you have to be killing time. You can actually be challenging yourself while you're getting from A to B, while you're grocery shopping. But I want you to use this as a platform to make yourself better in some way, shape, or form, and hear some very candid, authentic takes on things that normally otherwise aren't able to be given. So that's the value proposition of this, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, guys. Keep challenging yourself, and thanks for tuning into Case of the Mondays. I'm your host, Nick Williams of DeepBridge Consulting. See you next time.